Jonas had shared rooms with plenty of odd people in his life: soldiers on deployment, a cousin who smoked 3 packs a day, even a roommate who collected antique dolls and muttered to them at night. But none of that prepared him for living with an alien foxgirl. When he first met Celine, she'd seemed shy and polite, a foreign exchange researcher from some remote star colony studying Earth's ecosystems. She'd needed a place to stay, and Jonas needed help paying rent. Easy deal, he thought. Just split the bills, keep things tidy, and mind his own business. What he hadn't expected was that she would treat the apartment like her own personal den, padding around barefoot, humming strange songs, and showing absolutely no understanding of human modesty. Clothes, in her mind, were decorations, optional, if not entirely unnecessary. And Jonas quickly discovered that sharing space with someone so beautiful, so carefree, and so unbothered by nudity was a test of willpower he'd never trained for. It started the very first morning. Jonas had been half asleep, nursing a mug of coffee before work, when Celine padded out of her room, stretching like a cat, tail swaying lazily behind her. Her red-gold hair spilled down her back like fire, her fox-like ears twitching at every sound. And that was it. No robe, no pajamas, nothing but sunlight and confidence. "Morning," she said brightly, her golden eyes blinking with innocent cheer. Jonas nearly dropped the coffee pot. He caught it mid-fall, sloshing liquid down his hand, and tried to keep his voice steady. Morning. You forget something." She tilted her head, one ear flicking. "Forget what?" He gestured weakly at her bare self, his brain short-circuiting. "Clothes, maybe." Her expression turned thoughtful, as though he'd suggested something deeply philosophical. "Clothes are itchy," she said at last. "Besides, I am clean." Jonas groaned, rubbing his temples. He was a grown man. He'd faced riots, standoffs, and angry clients. But none of those things prepared him for this particular battle. For the rest of that week, he tried to ignore it. Maybe she'd figure things out. Maybe it was a cultural misunderstanding. He even attempted humor as a defense mechanism. "You know, most humans wear clothes indoors," he'd said, trying for casual. "It's kind of the rule." Celine had blinked, puzzled. "Strange rule. My people wear coverings only for ritual gatherings or if it's very, very cold. Otherwise, why hide what is natural?" Then she'd brushed past him with her tail flicking his arm, her scent faintly floral, leaving him staring helplessly after her. It was like living in a test designed by the universe to mock his self-control. Every time she moved, the world seemed to tilt slightly, the line between irritation and fascination blurring faster than he could keep up with. The incident with the pizza delivery was the final straw. Jonas had worked a 12-hour shift at the security post and was too tired to cook, so he ordered a large pepperoni. When the knock came, he called, "I got it." But before he could rise, Celine was already gliding across the room, humming, tail swaying hypnotically. "Wait!" Jonas shouted, but too late. She opened the door, radiant and, of course, utterly unclothed. The poor delivery kid froze, eyes wide, jaw slack, his soul visibly leaving his body. "You brought food?" Celine asked, smiling sweetly. Jonas lunged across the room like a man leaping on a grenade, snatched the pizza, shoved money into the boy's hand, and slammed the door. He turned to find Celine blinking at him, genuinely confused. "What's wrong? He had the food, didn't he?" Jonas pressed the box to his forehead, groaning. "Celine, you can't answer the door like that." She frowned slightly. "Why not?" He looked at her, really looked, and immediately regretted it. Because people will see you, and they'll think things." "Like what?" she asked innocently. He nearly shouted, "Never mind." By the next morning, he'd had enough. He gathered a pile of clothes, shirts, leggings, even a spare hoodie, and dropped them onto the couch like he was presenting sacred artifacts. "All right," he said, taking a deep breath. Lesson 1. Humans wear clothes. Inside, outside, always. It's not optional. Celine sat cross-legged on the couch, tail curling lazily. "All the time, even when it is warm." "Yes," he said firmly. "Even then. Even while sleeping?" "Yes." "Why?" He pinched the bridge of his nose. "Because it's polite. It's about privacy. You cover yourself so people don't get ideas." Her head tilted, one ear flicking. "Ideas? What kind?" He stared at her for a beat, then muttered, "The kind that caused trouble." Celine studied the shirt he handed her, holding it between two fingers like it might bite. Then, with a sly little grin, she said, "Then watch closely, teacher." She slipped it over her head, the motion unhurried, the fabric sliding over her like water until it settled just above her thighs. She spread her arms. "There. I am human now." Jonas coughed, turning away. "Close enough." From there, things didn't exactly improve. Celine treated clothing like costumes, each outfit a new experiment. One morning, she wore his uniform shirt, her tail sticking out from beneath it like a mischievous plume. Another evening, she strutted into the living room in a glittering cocktail dress, balancing a bowl of instant noodles. Jonas just stared. "That's a party dress," he said flatly. She twirled, the sequins flashing. "It is clothing, isn't it? Not for eating noodles." She laughed, carefree, the sound warm and musical. By the end of the week, Jonas felt like he was living in a sitcom. Only this one featured a fox-eared alien who didn't understand the concept of pajamas. Still, despite the chaos, part of him couldn't deny how alive the apartment felt now. Before her, it had been silent, sterile, just another human box filled with bills and dust. Now it was something else, something he couldn't quite name. Then came the snowstorm. It rolled in overnight, fierce and relentless. Jonas returned from his shift shaking off flakes, only to have the lights flicker and die. The heater coughed once and fell silent. "Fantastic," he muttered, rummaging for flashlights. Celine poked her head out of the kitchen, her ears perked high. "Did the lights give up?" "Yup," Jonas said. "Half the block's out. We'll have to ration heat until the power's back." She padded into the room barefoot, her tails curling close for warmth. "Ration heat? How do you ration warmth?" He pointed at the small pile of firewood near the wall. "By staying in one room and not wasting energy." She studied him, then smiled slyly. "Then I will stay close to you. You are very warm, Jonas." He nearly dropped the flashlight. "That's one way to do it, I guess." By morning, the storm had sealed the world outside. Jonas tried to keep busy, reading old reports by lantern light, while Celine treated the blackout like an adventure. She wore one of his flannels, tails sticking out beneath it, humming as she explored the apartment. "You were right," she said at one point, curling up beside him on the couch. "Clothes can be fun. They smell like you." Jonas almost choked on his coffee. "Celine, you can't just say things like that." "Why not? It's true. When I wear your clothes, I feel like you're holding me." He groaned, covering his face. "You're going to be the death of me." She laughed softly. Humans are so dramatic. Later, when he tried again to explain modesty, she listened intently, chin propped in her hands. "So you cover yourself not because you are ashamed, but because others might look wrongly?" "Exactly," Jonas said. "It's about respect." Her eyes gleamed mischievously. "Then what if I only want you to look wrongly?" Jonas nearly spilled his drink. "Celine." She blinked innocently. "Did I say it wrong?" "No, you said it very right. And that's the problem," he muttered, his pulse hammering. The storm howled outside, but inside, the tension was thicker than the snow piling against the windows. Celine didn't seem to notice, or maybe she did, and simply enjoyed watching him squirm. That night, she curled beside him again, wrapped in his flannel, her head resting on his shoulder. "Humans are strange," she murmured. "You build walls to keep others out, but you crave warmth more than we do." Jonas smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why we need each other." She hummed in agreement, her tail brushing his arm in slow, lazy sweeps. For the first time in years, Jonas didn't feel the usual hollow quiet that came with nights alone. Instead, he felt something dangerously close to peace. The storm dragged on through the night, the city buried beneath a heavy white silence. By morning, the windows were frosted over, and Jonas woke to the soft weight of something warm pressed against his side. For a heartbeat, his foggy brain told him it was just the blanket. Then the blanket shifted inside. Celine was sprawled across him, tangled in one of his shirts, her tail draped over his waist like a ribbon of fire. Her breathing was slow and peaceful, her hair fanned across his chest, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel alone. He should have moved, should have cleared his throat or at least put some distance between them, but instead he just lay there, watching the way the morning light brushed across her skin. When she finally stirred, stretching with a sleepy purr, her golden eyes blinked up at him. "Morning, human," she murmured softly. "You make a comfortable pillow." Jonas tried not to grin. And you make a heavy one. When she rolled off him and padded toward the kitchen, he noticed she'd somehow managed to steal the last of the blanket with her. He groaned, dragging himself upright. You planning to cook again? He called. If the stove still works, she answered, her voice carrying through the apartment. A moment later, he smelled something faintly herbal, sharp but pleasant. When he joined her, Celine was crouched over a small camping burner, stirring something in a pan. Eggs with herbs, she said proudly. Your food is very bland, so I fixed it. Jonas eyed the green-speckled scramble with suspicion, but sat down anyway. You really don't have to cook for me. She turned, her smile bright. I saw in your human dramas that cooking for your mate is normal. Jonas nearly dropped his fork. Mate? Where did you get that idea? Celine blinked, utterly serious. From your tablet. Humans show affection by making food, by touching, by sleeping close. You said we are sharing space, yes? Then I should learn your ways. Jonas rubbed the bridge of his nose. We're roommates, not. He stopped, realizing how pointless that sentence was. She just smiled wider, pleased with herself. That afternoon, while he fixed a loose window latch, Celine perched on the couch with her tails curled neatly around her, watching the snow. Jonas, she said suddenly, why do humans separate everything? Rooms, lives, hearts. He looked up, caught off guard. Because it keeps things organized, I guess. Or because you are afraid, she countered softly. You hide what you feel the way you hide your skin. He froze, screwdriver in hand. She said it so simply, so earnestly, that he didn't know how to respond. When he turned, her eyes were fixed on him, not teasing this time, not curious, but searching. You hide from me too, she added, her voice barely above a whisper. I see it. Jonas exhaled slowly, setting the tool down. I don't hide, he said, though even he didn't sound convinced. I just try not to make things complicated. Celine tilted her head. Then maybe complication is good. It means we are alive. He didn't answer. There wasn't one that would make sense. As evening fell, the temperature dropped again. They moved into the living room where the small fireplace glowed with weak embers. Jonas threw another log on, the flames sputtering to life, while Celine curled up nearby, her tails fanned like a halo. She looked almost ethereal in the firelight, her golden eyes reflecting sparks. In my clan, she said, sharing warmth is sacred. It means trust. Jonas smiled faintly, leaning back against the couch. And here, it usually means someone's cold. She giggled, a soft, musical sound. Then we are both right. Without hesitation, she crawled closer, slipping under his arm until she was pressed against him. Her body radiated heat, her heartbeat steady against his chest. Better, she whispered. Jonas tried to focus on the flickering flames instead of how soft she felt, or how her hair smelled faintly of wildflowers and smoke. The following day, when the storm refused to let up, they settled into a strange rhythm, half domestic, half surreal. Celine experimented with clothing, wandering the apartment in mismatched pieces. One of his flannels, a pair of leggings she'd borrowed from the neighbor's laundry basket after claiming they looked lonely, and, inexplicably, his winter scarf tied like a sash. Jonas tried not to question it. Every time he did, she'd simply smile and say, I am learning your fashion. She was endlessly fascinated by Earth habits, brushing her hair with his comb, asking if Netflix was a type of ritual, and repeatedly trying to figure out why humans stored their food in boxes. But behind all her curiosity was a growing warmth, an unspoken understanding that neither of them quite acknowledged. She'd begun making tea for him without asking, adjusting his collar when he came home, and sometimes, when she thought he wasn't looking, she'd stare at him with a thoughtful kind of wonder, as if she were studying something rare and precious. By the third evening of isolation, Jonas had almost convinced himself he'd adjusted to her presence. That illusion shattered with a single knock at the door. It was firm, familiar, too confident to be a stranger. Jonas, you home? Called a deep voice. His blood ran cold. Grant, his co-worker, the last person he needed to see right now. Yeah, one SEC, he shouted, panic spiking as he glanced toward Celine. She was lounging on the couch, tails sprawled like a throne. Celine, go to your room. And put something on. She blinked. Why? Because my friend's here and I don't want him to die of shock. She shrugged and wrapped herself lazily in a blanket, still looking entirely too ethereal. Jonas cracked the door open just enough to block the view. Grant grinned, snow dusting his jacket. Hey man, power's still out, huh? Thought we could wait it out with a drink. Not a good time, Jonas said quickly. Really? Grant frowned. What? You hiding a secret project in there? Jonas forced a laugh. Something like that. And then he felt it. A warm presence behind him, breath brushing his neck. Jonas? Who is it? Celine asked innocently. Grant's grin faltered, his gaze flicking over Jonas's shoulder before darting away. Oh, he said, suddenly awkward. Didn't realize you had company. Jonas turned crimson. It's not. She's not what it looks like. Grant held up his hands. Hey, no judgment. Didn't know you were into the whole alien thing. What? Jonas hissed. She's not, ugh. Celine, still oblivious, tilted her head. Alien thing, she echoed. Grant coughed. Right. I should go. Enjoy your evening. He gave Jonas a knowing look and disappeared down the hall. Jonas shut the door and groaned, pressing his forehead against it. Great. Now the entire post is going to think I'm dating an extraterrestrial pinup. Celine's ears twitched. Dating? Is that like mating? No. Yes. It's complicated, he muttered. She smiled slyly. Then I am your girlfriend now? Jonas spun around. That's not how it works. Then teach me, she said simply, eyes gleaming with mischief. He opened his mouth, but no words came. There was no winning with her. The next morning, Jonas woke to the smell of herbs again. When he stumbled into the kitchen, Celine was cooking, humming softly, still barefoot, still impossibly radiant. She'd tied one of his shirts at the hip, and every time she turned, her tails brushed his leg. Breakfast, she said proudly. Girlfriends make food. You're really leaning into that word, Jonas said, trying to sound casual. Of course. If I am your girlfriend, I must practice. He sat down, resigned. You know, most people ease into that. I am efficient, she replied with a grin. He couldn't help laughing. Whatever she was, efficient was one word for it. After breakfast, she decided to surprise him again. When Jonas returned from checking the breaker box, the living room had been transformed. A blanket was spread on the floor, 2 mugs of steaming tea sat atop it, and Celine knelt in the center, smiling proudly. Picnic, she declared. Humans have picnics with their mates. Jonas blinked. In the middle of the living room? Outside is frozen, she said simply. Inside is warm. Same thing. She patted the spot beside her until he sat, shaking his head. You're impossible. And yet you stay, she said softly, her gaze lingering on his face in a way that made his chest tighten. For a long while, they drank tea in silence, the only sound the soft crackle of the fire. When she finally spoke again, her voice was quieter. Jonas, do you really think I am beautiful? The question caught him off guard. Of course I do, he said. She searched his face, her golden eyes shimmering. Even when I do not follow your human rules. Especially then, he admitted. Her ears flushed pink, and her tails curled closer around her. Then maybe, she whispered, I wish to learn what beauty means to humans. Maybe you can teach me that too. Something inside Jonas shifted at those words, something heavy and unspoken. He'd told himself for days that she was just a roommate, strange, naive, but harmless. Yet sitting there, watching her smile shyly at him through the flickering firelight, he knew that lie wouldn't last much longer. The air between them felt charged, every glance a spark waiting to catch. Celine moved a little closer, her knee brushing his, her tail curling around his leg like a question. He could feel her heartbeat through the space between them. He swallowed hard. Celine, he said softly, you have to be careful saying things like that. She tilted her head. Why? Because someone might take it the wrong way. Would you? She asked. He looked into her eyes, saw the warmth and sincerity there, and for once, he didn't have an answer. The storm refused to break, howling around the apartment like some ancient thing testing the walls. Jonas had stopped counting the days since the blackout began. The world beyond the frosted glass might as well have vanished, leaving only the two of them and the steady heartbeat of firelight in the living room. Each night, they grew a little closer, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet rhythm of shared space. The brush of her tail against his arm when she passed, the warmth of her shoulder against his as they sat on the couch. The air between them thickened with something unspoken, a tension Jonas tried to ignore but couldn't quite shake. He told himself it was the isolation, the cold, the strangeness of the situation. But when she smiled at him in that unguarded, luminous way, when her eyes caught the glow of the lantern and seemed to see straight through him, those excuses crumbled like frost under sunlight. That morning, Jonas woke to find Celine perched on the windowsill, wrapped in one of his flannels, her tail flicking lazily as she watched the snow fall. "You ever get tired of staring at the cold?" he asked groggily. She turned, her golden eyes soft with thought. "It is quiet out there," she murmured. "When everything is still, you can hear your heart speak." Jonas smiled faintly. "Mine usually just complains about coffee." She laughed, a small sound like chimes. "Your heart speaks of loneliness," she said gently. He froze, halfway through pulling on his boots. "That's a bold thing to say before breakfast." "It is true," she said simply, sliding off the sill. "You built your life with walls and doors, always waiting for something you won't admit." Jonas rubbed the back of his neck, unsure how to respond. "You've been watching too many of my dramas." "Maybe," she teased. "But they are full of lonely men who forget to listen." He didn't argue, mostly because she wasn't wrong. By midday, the fire had burned low again, and Jonas knelt to add another log. Behind him, Celine busied herself with the kettle, humming an unfamiliar tune. It was soft and lilting, something ancient that stirred faint recognition in his chest. "What song is that?" he asked. "It is for calling warmth," she said. "A fox mother's song. We sing it when storms come." He looked up at her, the way the flickering light danced along her hair. "And does it work?" She smiled faintly. "Sometimes, when someone listens." For a long moment, the only sound was her humming and the crackle of fire. Jonas felt something shift, subtle, inevitable, the kind of change that happens when two people stop pretending to be strangers. She turned, catching his gaze, and whatever walls he'd built to protect himself cracked a little more. Later, while the storm roared outside, Celine tried to teach him one of her herbal blends. "You humans boil everything too long," she scolded playfully, as she ground leaves with a stone. "You kill the breath of the plant. We also like our food without poison," he countered, watching her work. She smiled without looking up. "You think life is safe if it has no risk." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You really enjoy turning every conversation into philosophy, don't you?" "Maybe it is my way of understanding you," she said, then looked up, her eyes gleaming. "Or maybe it is my way of distracting you." "From what?" he asked, already suspicious. "From this." She flicked a pinch of powdered herb at him, laughing when he sputtered and coughed. "You're evil," he muttered, brushing it off. "Playful," she corrected, stepping closer, her tail brushing his side. "It is how my people show affection. By trying to choke them? By making them smile." She was close enough now that he could see every fleck of gold in her eyes, smell the faint trace of her skin, wildflowers, and something colder, like snow on metal. His heartbeat stumbled, and for the first time, he didn't try to hide it. That night, the storm's strength finally began to wane, though the world outside was still a wasteland of white. Celine sat curled on the couch, her knees drawn up beneath his oversized sweater, her chin resting on them as she watched the dying embers. Jonas sat beside her, too aware of the small distance between them. "You've been quiet," he said. "Thinking," she murmured. "Dangerous habit." "You told me humans value thought," she replied, glancing up. "Only when it doesn't get them in trouble." "Then I must be very human now," she said with a faint smile. When he chuckled, she reached out, resting her fingers lightly on his wrist. The touch was gentle, uncertain, but it burned through him like static. "Jonas," she said softly, "do you ever wish you belonged somewhere else?" He hesitated. "Sometimes. But it's not about where. It's about who." She studied him quietly, as though committing every word to memory. "Then maybe," she whispered, "you already belong, and you just haven't noticed." The conversation hung between them, fragile and heavy. Celine shifted closer, her tail curling around his leg again, and he didn't stop her. The firelight turned her hair into molten copper, her skin glowing soft and warm. Jonas swallowed hard, his thoughts a storm of their own. He'd tried so hard to treat her as a guest, a responsibility, something harmless and simple. But there was nothing simple about her. Everything about Celine, her laugh, her questions, her complete disregard for barriers, drew him in deeper, until he couldn't tell where admiration ended and desire began. She tilted her head, sensing his silence. You are looking at me strangely, she murmured. Can you blame me? He said, voice low. Her lips curved. Then maybe I am learning human beauty after all. He laughed quietly, shaking his head. You've been beautiful since the day you showed up. The problem is, you know it now. Is that bad? No, he said, almost to himself. It's dangerous. Later, as the lantern burned low, Celine curled against him again, her head on his shoulder. Your heartbeat is fast, she whispered. So is yours, he said. That means we are alive. It means something, he muttered, but she only smiled, her eyes fluttering shut. He sat there for a long time, listening to the rhythm of her breathing, feeling her warmth soak into him until the cold outside felt like a distant dream. He knew what was happening, knew what it meant, but he couldn't bring himself to stop it. Maybe he didn't want to. The next morning, the storm finally broke. Light spilled through the windows, pale and clean, revealing a world reborn in white. Celine stood at the balcony door, staring out at the snow with wonder in her eyes. It is beautiful, she breathed. It's freezing, Jonas muttered, tugging on his jacket. When he looked again, she was already stepping outside, barefoot, wearing only one of his shirts, the hem fluttering against her thighs. Celine, he shouted, rushing forward. He dragged her back inside, slamming the door. Are you insane? You'll freeze out there. She blinked innocently. I just wanted to feel it. You can feel it from inside, he snapped, rubbing her arms to warm her. You can't just stand out there half-dressed. Someone could see you. She frowned slightly. Why should it matter? He stopped, exasperated. Because you're beautiful, Celine. Too beautiful. People will stare. They'll think things. Things, she echoed softly. Like what? Like, things you don't want them to. Her ears flicked, confusion giving way to mischief. You mean mating things? He groaned, covering his face. God, you're impossible. She smiled sweetly. Then teach me. Her tone was light, but her eyes weren't. There was understanding there now, real understanding, and it made his breath catch. Celine, he said slowly, you have to trust me on this. Not everyone out there will see you the way I do. Some people would hurt you. She looked at him quietly, then stepped closer, her voice low. You do not want them to see me because you wish to be the only one. That's not, he stopped. She wasn't wrong. Maybe, he admitted softly. Maybe I just don't want to share what I can't even explain. She studied him for a long moment, then smiled faintly. Then I will learn for you. I will learn your human rules. He blinked. Just like that. Only if you promise me something, she said. When I make mistakes, you will laugh with me. Not at me. Jonas smiled, tension fading. Deal. She nodded once, pleased, and tugged one of his sweaters over her head. Then I am ready for lessons. That night, they ate the last of the pizza, sitting side by the dying fire. Celine leaned into him, her tail wrapped loosely around his leg. Humans are strange, she murmured. You build walls, but when they fall, you don't know what to do. You make it sound poetic, he said. It is truth, she replied. You have been lonely too long. He didn't argue. She was right again, and hearing it from her lips hurt more than he expected. She tilted her head, watching him in silence. You are afraid, she said softly, of what happens if I love you. Jonas stared at the fire. Maybe. Or maybe I'm afraid of what happens if you stop. Celine's eyes softened, and for once, she didn't tease. She just reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. Then I will not stop. He turned to her, caught off guard by the certainty in her voice, and in that moment, with the firelight painting her in gold, he realized there was no part of him left that wanted to resist her. Morning crept in slow and pale, spilling through the curtains like a quiet secret. The storm outside had finally given up its howl, leaving the city blanketed in a heavy silence. Jonas stirred awake on the couch, the fire reduced to a faint glow. He shifted slightly and felt the familiar brush of a tail across his stomach. Celine was curled up against him, her head resting on his chest, her breath soft and warm through the fabric of his shirt. For a fleeting second, he simply watched her, the way her ears twitched even in sleep, the faint smile playing on her lips, the steady rise and fall of her shoulders. The apartment felt different now. It wasn't just four walls anymore. It was alive, pulsing quietly with the rhythm of something that neither of them dared to name aloud. He brushed a strand of her hair from her face, and her eyes fluttered open, golden and bright. You stayed, she whispered. He smiled. Where else would I go? Celine pushed herself up on one elbow, studying him as if the concept of staying was something rare and fragile. Where I come from, she said softly. After we mate, sometimes the other leaves before dawn. It is the way of foxes, we vanish with the night. Her tone was gentle, but Jonas could hear the trace of fear beneath it. He reached up, resting his palm against her cheek. I'm not going anywhere. Her smile deepened, relief washing over her features. She leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. Good, she murmured. Then I will not let you go. She shifted closer, curling up against him again, and for a long time neither of them spoke. Outside, the snow still fell, soft and endless, as if the world had been remade just for them. By midday, the world beyond the windows began to stir again. Distant sounds of shovels scraping and engines trying to start. Life was returning, but Jonas wasn't ready to face it yet. He sat at the table, watching as Celine wandered barefoot across the apartment in one of his shirts, humming as she poured tea into two mismatched mugs. You really like wearing my clothes, he said, trying to keep the smile from his voice. They smell like you, she replied simply, and they make me feel safe. He laughed softly. I never thought anyone would say that about my laundry. She handed him a mug and sat beside him, tails coiling loosely around the chair leg. You make jokes to hide when you are nervous, she said, taking a sip. You notice that, huh? I notice everything about you. Her words hung in the air, quiet but heavy, and he found himself staring into her eyes again, realizing just how easy it had become to lose himself there. Later that afternoon, the power finally flickered back to life. The heater groaned, the fridge hummed, and the lights bathed the room in pale, artificial glow. Celine gasped softly, blinking against it. The world breathes again, she whispered. Jonas chuckled, standing to stretch. Yeah, and now I can finally have real coffee. But as he turned toward the kitchen, he paused, noticing how she looked suddenly distant, her expression clouded by something he couldn't name. Hey, he said gently, you okay? She hesitated, her tails curling closer around her. Now that the world wakes up, she said slowly, will you still want me here? The question hit him harder than he expected. What? He asked. Of course. Why would you even ask that? She met his gaze, her eyes uncertain. Because you live in two worlds. One of rules and noise, and one of silence and warmth. I do not fit in the first. He crossed the space between them and took her hand. Then I'll bring a little of the second with me, he said. You don't have to fit. You just have to be here. Her smile returned then, soft and luminous, though her eyes still shimmered with something like disbelief. You are strange, Jonas, she whispered. Humans speak of love like it is a thing that breaks. You hold it like it might last. He squeezed her hand lightly. Maybe that's because I've spent too long holding nothing. She blinked, her ears twitching as if weighing the meaning in his words. Then, slowly, she leaned in, brushing her lips against his. It wasn't like the night before, not frantic or wild, but steady, quiet, full of warmth that spread through him like the first breath after winter. When she pulled away, her cheeks were flushed, her voice barely audible. Then we will make something that does not break. The next few days blurred together in the soft rhythm of returning normalcy. The streets cleared, the building lights glowed again, and Jonas went back to short shifts at the security post. But coming home no longer felt like stepping into silence. Celine had transformed the apartment in small, quiet ways. She'd filled a jar with dried herbs on the counter, draped a blanket over the couch, and left strange little carved stones near the window to keep warmth from leaving, she said. She still walked barefoot, her tails brushing against the floor, and her laugh filled the rooms in ways the heater never could. Yet even as life resumed, something between them had changed, deepened into a rhythm that didn't need to be spoken aloud. One evening, after a long day, Jonas came home to find her sitting cross-legged on the floor, working on one of her herbal concoctions. The smell was sharp, clean, and oddly comforting. That one going to explode too, he teased. She grinned. Only if you breathe too close. He crouched beside her, watching the way her hands moved, delicate, precise, almost ritualistic. What's this one for? He asked. Protection, she said. For hearts that wander too far. He frowned lightly. Planning on wandering off anytime soon? No, she said softly, looking up at him. But you might. The words stung more than he wanted to admit. I'm not going anywhere, he said again. You keep saying that, she murmured, as if saying it enough will make it true. Her tail brushed against his hand, tentative and warm. You don't have to promise me forever, she whispered. Just today. He smiled faintly. Then today's yours. They fell into a quiet closeness after that, the kind that didn't need grand confessions or declarations. Sometimes they'd sit together without speaking, sharing tea or watching the snow melt from the balcony. Sometimes she'd hum one of her songs, the kind that made his chest ache without knowing why. She had become part of the rhythm of his days, her laughter tangled with the small comforts of home. But there were moments, fleeting ones, when he caught her staring out the window at the stars, her expression distant. Once, he asked, do you miss it? Your world. She smiled faintly without looking away. Sometimes, but only because I did not know this feeling before I came here. What feeling? He asked. Belonging, she said softly. It was late one night, after another shared silence, when Celine spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. Jonas, when the researchers call me back, I will have to go. His heart stumbled. When? Soon. Maybe weeks, maybe days. The stars do not wait long. He sat still, the words sinking in like ice. You're leaving? She nodded, her tails curling close around her legs. It is my duty. I came to learn, and I have learned too much. Too much, he echoed. Too much to leave easily, she said. He reached for her hand, holding it tight. Then don't. She shook her head gently. It is not choice. My people would not understand why I stayed. They would think Earth has changed me. Maybe it has, he said, his voice rough. She smiled sadly. Then I will take a piece of it with me. The days that followed were both beautiful and unbearable. Every shared moment felt heavier, precious, because they both knew it might be one of the last. Jonas tried not to ask when she would go, and she tried not to remind him. They laughed, cooked, argued about small things, and held on to every heartbeat like it might be the last one they'd share. On her final night, the stars were visible again for the first time since the storm. Celine stood by the window, her hair glowing in the moonlight, tails fanned behind her like silver flame. They are calling, she whispered. Jonas stood beside her, silent. Then let them call, he said. They can wait. She turned to him, smiling through the shimmer of unshed tears. You would fight the stars for me. If I had to. She stepped closer, resting her forehead against his chest. Then maybe they will understand. They didn't speak again after that, not in words. The night passed in quiet touches, shared warmth, the kind of silence that said more than any confession ever could. When dawn came, she was gone. The apartment felt impossibly empty, her scent fading from the air, her laughter echoing only in memory. But on the table lay a small jar of herbs, sealed and tied with a strip of red cloth. On it, a single note written in her careful, looping script, for hearts that wander, to find their way home. Weeks later, when Jonas sat by the window watching the snow melt into spring, he caught the faintest flicker of movement in the distance, a streak of gold and white beneath the morning light. For a heartbeat, he could have sworn he saw her, tails glinting like flame, watching him from the edge of the woods before vanishing into the trees. He smiled to himself, feeling the warmth of her presence still lingering like sunlight in the cold. She might have left, but she hadn't taken everything. Some things, the laughter, the fire, the quiet belonging, stayed behind. And for the first time, Jonas didn't feel alone in his small human world. Somewhere out there, a fox-tailed woman had learned what it meant to be human, and a man had learned how to listen to his heart.